Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are.
Welcome everyone.
Yes.
Welcome, Linda.
Welcome, Linda. My name is Maurizio Benazzo.
My name is Zaya Benazzo, and we're speaking today from indigenous coastal Miwok land and Pomo indigenous land, so-called Sebastopol. And
yes.
We are delighted to have as a guest today, Linda Tai. So good to have you with us, Linda.
And
good to be with you all.
Yeah. Maybe we start reading a brief bio in case to introduce you more formally. So Linda Tai is a trauma therapist and educator who specializes in brain and body-based modality for addressing complex developmental trauma. Linda's work centers on healing with a special focus on the experiences of adult children of refugees and immigrants. Her teaching is infused with empathy, storytelling, humor, research, practical tool, applied knowledge, and experiential wisdom. So, yum.
So just to introduce a little bit of the structure, we will start with a conversation with Linda. We'll ask a few questions, and then we'll make sure we have space for you to bring your comments or questions to the space and just to bring your presence. And we ask everyone to keep their questions brief so we can have more people hear more voices into the space. We like to offer priority, if I can use that word, to people of color, BIPOC people. So if you identified such, please let us know in whatever way feels comfortable to you. And we would like to bring you first.
Yes. And still again.
And also, if you don't want to be on camera, that's totally okay. You can have your camera off. Or if you want us to read your questions, please write your questions in the Q&A box and just let us know that we should read your questions. Mm-hmm. It's so good to see people coming from every corner of this beautiful Mother Earth. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And I just want to reiterate, in case maybe I escaped my brain, raise your hand and write your question in the Q&A section at the bottom of your, so we know more or less what your question is, because some question can be very similar, so we can sort of condense it so we don't repeat the same question over and over.
And Linda, I wonder if you could offer something to bring us fully here to orient. We're coming from so many directions, and just so we're here together.
Yes. So, cảm ơn Zaya, cảm ơn Maurizio. Chào bạn. Tôi rất vui và hân hạnh có được cơ hội cùng các bạn hôm nay. So, welcome, friends. I'm coming to you today from the lands of the Duwamish and Coast Salish peoples. I live on the traditional lands of the Tanana Athabascan peoples of the Middle Tanana Valley, also known as Fairbanks, Alaska. And I was born in Vietnam and raised in Australia. I'm a former child refugee. And let us start with an exercise that comes from, it actually comes from the world of Aikido, a way of centering ourselves and placing ourselves into this moment. So if you like, I invite you to orient towards the horizon right in front of you. Allow your gaze to soften and bring the back of your head back and your chin down, lengthen through the spine, if that feels okay with you. And then I invite you to have a look over your right shoulder towards the horizon there, or the imaginary horizon. And then if you like, I invite you to scan the horizon, the imaginary horizon, over to your left shoulder. And then let's trace all the way to the left. So you're looking all the way behind you. And then coming through center and all the way behind you in the other direction. And then coming back through center. So we've connected to those who have come before us, those behind us, the direction in front of us, as well as those who have yet to come, and those who are here alongside us at our shoulders. Let's orient now to the sky above, as well as the earth below. So the ground beneath your feet, the lava, the mud, the earthworm, the grass, the sedges, the rivers, and then looking up towards the trees and the mountains, and then the clouds and the sky, the moon and the stars and the aurora. And then coming back through center, and then the seventh direction is right here. So if you like, I invite you to, if it's okay with you, to look down at torso center, where all of these 6 directions connect. And then if you like, to imagine a straight line from your torso center through your feet into the earth. And as you bring your head up, to notice lines of energy at each of the 4 directions, as well as connected through to the sky above. And in that directionality, positionality, to connect the 490 people who are currently in this space together at the same time. And to experience, as it feels okay with you, the experience of being a part of something bigger than yourself. Those who have come before, the future ahead of you, and those who have yet to come, those who stand alongside you, the natural world from the ground below you to the sky above, and you here with us in this present moment. And then as you like, perhaps you may wish to seal this practice with a self-touch or a self-hold that feels okay with you. And it's optional, so you don't have to. Throughout our time today, you don't have to look towards the screen the whole time. You can orient towards any of these directions as it feels appropriate for you.
Oh, delicious. It just feels the most natural way of being in this expanded space within and embrace by that. I would like to invite you, if it's possible, to maybe slow down the comments during the conversation. It just can be sometimes too much to be getting too many stimulus. And so if we can keep it more quiet, and unless you have a really burning need to share something, and then we'll have more space for everyone to write and share what you feel. So Linda, I wonder if for those of us who might not know about your journey, if you could share something about like what propelled you on a healing journey and on a path of becoming a therapist and helping others heal.
So I was a messed up teenager and I was a messed up young adult. I had troubles with the juvenile justice system. I got expelled from school. I had struggles with addiction. And then somewhere in my 30s, it was 2014, I got The Body Keeps the Score on the day that it came out, and it gave me a template and a roadmap forward. And yet there was so much in my own history that I didn't realize played a role in how I was turning up in the world. And so it was greatly soothing to know that it wasn't about what was wrong with me, it was about what happened to me. Yeah. And so as a former child refugee, I got to unpack some of that trauma that I didn't realize that happened at the age of 2 and yet had longitudinal consequences for myself and my family. And putting together the pieces of what it actually means to be forcibly displaced, to have to uproot oneself and move somewhere else, and yet to experience, paradoxically, a sense of soothing around the fact that I went through that with my family. And so they weren't the source and the cause of any trauma. And so to recognize that, that there was a path forward for me. And so I did the work of healing my own trauma, working on my attachment stuff. However, the symptoms that I had didn't match what, like all the trauma symptoms, right? And it didn't match all the attachment symptoms. And I'm thinking, man, I'm really messed up because here, according to all of this, it says I have incredibly disorganized attachment. And yet there was no abuse between my parents and myself. There was simply benign neglect. And I'm talking like I discovered Alaska and I went there to hide out from the world. I live in a log cabin down a trail in the woods without running water, to get away from the world and to get away from the constructs of the modern world, where I'd go into town once every few weeks or once every few months to get supplies, then go back and live in my little secluded hole. And at one point I realized, hang on, this is how the Vietnam veterans live here in Alaska. They come here to hide out from the world. And how is it that we are so same, but different in terms of our stories, but same, but yet there's that piece in common around war. Yeah. And then I started getting even more curious about why it was that here's how I present, but here's what the research says. And so if you like, I invite you to write down these words. Internalized devaluation, pervasive self-assessment, learned voicelessness, psychological homelessness, not knowing who you belong to, where you fit in, feeling betwixt and between all worlds. Yeah. Rage, as well as inhibited anger, like the inability to set boundaries or even ask what I want, and then rage would pop out. Survival orientation. Idealization of qualities of the abuser or the people in power. Yeah, just idealization of their qualities. And then complex and ambiguous, accumulated collective grief and loss. Ambiguous and complex, accumulated grief and loss. And I remember looking at that list and going, oh, that's complex developmental trauma. This is like what I've studied, right? This is what I'm... And then I looked at the author of the work, and it was Dr. Kenneth Hardy, who's a Black psychologist who specializes in the invisible wounds of racialized trauma. And that was when I went, oh my God, this entire time I've been misdiagnosing myself with a pathology and blaming my parents. And the more that I unpacked Ken Hardy's body of work, the more I saw that this applied to bodies that are marginalized by society, including femme bodies. Yeah. And I see that in these spaces, there's typically a lot more femme bodies. Yeah. Disabled bodies, BIPOC bodies, neurodivergent bodies and minds. Yeah. Queer bodies. And what I see happening so often, and I've talked about this with my BIPOC colleagues, is that they say, oh, I go to a therapist and I talk about my social anxiety and my anxiety in the world. And the first question they ask is, what was your relationship with your mother like? And they fail to recognize that there's a big missing piece when it comes to our attachment relationship with society and how society perceives us, witnesses us, reflects our coherence back to us, or actually doesn't reflect our coherence back to us. And coherence is a big word for attachment theorists, right? I think, that your caregiver gives you a sense of coherence, wholeness, that you make sense. Yeah. And when that doesn't happen, we split into parts. So I'm just going to pause here and just give us a space to rock ourselves, to digest some of this. And I'm also open to unpacking some of this in conversation with yourself, Zaya and Maurizio, as well as with the community before we move on to the next pieces of this, because I love emergence. I love organicity.
Wow, I'm almost stunned, but I just wonder, like, where do you feel the attachment model kind of failed you in your own understanding? I mean, this list is incredibly expensive, so maybe we can just, like the last one just hit me, a complex accumulated grief, collective grief.
And ambiguous.
And ambiguous. So there's no words, there's no language, but we all have felt it. And we all carry the grief of our people, community.
Yeah.
So that's something really hit me very deep.
Me too.
And I don't have anything to orient to and begin to digest that.
Yes. So trauma is what happened that shouldn't have happened. Trauma is also what didn't happen that should have happened. Grief is I have something and now it's gone. And grief is also I didn't get something. And the not getting of that has left a pervasive emptiness on my inner landscape. And yet I don't get what it is that I didn't get. And so I move through the world bereft of something that I can't name. And then we add on top of that the fact that you can't grieve when you're in survival mode. We don't grieve when we're in survival mode. We're trying to get ahead. And so we stuff down our losses. We suck it up and stuff it down. We rub some dirt on it and we keep moving. And then we add on top of that the layer of Yeah, and Resmaa Menakem says this, that trauma decontextualized in an individual looks like identity, and trauma decontextualized in a family looks like family traits, and trauma decontextualized in a people's looks like culture. And so we know from the attachment research that parents with unresolved losses have a significant impact upon the developmental trajectory of the child, because our developmentally appropriate losses aren't held or recognized by our parents. I mean, I grew up with my dad saying to me, at least we're not getting bombs dropped on us anymore. Right, that was his response to a kid stealing my lunch or bullying me, or, just inappropriate stuff. And so I didn't get to develop a skill set for grief because my parents weren't able to help me. And the thing is, trauma says exposure equals death, and grief says all I need is witnessing. Mm. So then you have a catch-22 where the healing that comes from having your grief, your grievances be witnessed and held, can feel treacherous when you've had your grief or your grievances be minimized, dismissed, argued with, victim blamed. Yeah. When you've been told, well, you got a government handout, you should be happy. Right. It's like attachment. I mean, there's a attachment theorist, Carlin Lyons Ruth, who takes video footage of interaction between parents and children. And then she follows them longitudinally over time, and she pinpointed the exact sequence of things that happen for children who as adults develop extreme abandonment disorders, symptoms, expressions, manifestations. Yeah. And what she saw when you slow down the video footage is there's the stranger with the infant playing on the ground, parent comes back, and then the infant crawls towards the mother, typically, and then infant gets into a certain proximity and the mother takes a half step back, and the infant stops and then collapses. It's so quick. Wow. And then the mother comes along, picks up the infant, puts the infant down in amongst a bunch of toys and gives objects. Yeah, so the infant learns to soothe with objects. Right, so there we get the soothing through objects. But how different is that to me walking down the street with my parents as a child and people come towards us, stop, and then like just that stop, right? And then taking a half step back, yeah, or walking onto the other side of the road. I mean, this is 1979 in Australia, country, rural Australia. Or people who would come and help, like really good, well-intentioned people who would come to help, but they'd come, they'd stop, there'd be the step back, and then they'd give us clothing or food or whatever, and then like out of here. Like I couldn't help but see those parallels the very first time when I saw that footage. And so part of the collected, ambiguous, complicated, complex grief and loss is that we're supposed to be grateful. Mm. How many of us as children were told you have to just be grateful? You have it so much better than what I did, right? So we can extrapolate that to so many experiences. Well, at least your husband doesn't hit you, right? Like, the ways in which that violence then becomes lateralized amongst communities, within our own communities where we're supposed to be safe, right? And so that's like, it's just the snowball. It's the snowball. Mm. Mm.
I'm just going to respond to, maybe, Lisa, we can turn off the chat for a moment, just so we stay a little focused on the stream here, and then we will open it. And what I'm also sensing, Linda, is like our parents, they were living in a survival mode. So grief, they didn't have the opportunity to grieve. Even grief was not a concept for them. So here we are feeling that the weight of the grief. And often when we begin on this journey, we don't even know what we're grieving, but it's like so enormous and heavy that it's there, but you can't even speak to it because we don't, so it's passed down, it lives in our nervous systems and our bodies, but we don't have language, we don't have words. Maybe we have a little bit of history that really helps. And so I just wonder, for your own journey, like, where did you begin touching that enormous grief? And also through that grief, for me personally, I have developed enormous compassion for my parents. Basically, the blame in time became compassion. I wonder if that in any way resonates with you, or...
Yes. It's actually really quite fascinating with grief, because we tend to go in one of two directions. We tend to have this experience of tears that I don't know what I have to cry over, but there's just so many tears in there that if I start crying, I don't know if I'd stop. And then there are those of us who are like, grief, I don't know what you're talking about, right? Like we actually are and that was me. I had no idea that there was that much grief there, zero. I knew that it was trauma because of the body keeps the score. And I went and did all of my own trauma work. And I end up in these community singing spaces as a result of the trauma work, because I've been hearing Bessel say for 5 years, hey, this interpersonal rhythms, right? This is what gets lost with complex developmental trauma. It's good to be able to develop interpersonal rhythms, and you can do that through singing and drumming and dancing. And I'm like, oh, okay. So after 5 years, I found myself in a song group, and it was call and response singing. And the body may keep the score, but song will reveal the truth in your soul. And so we started singing, and I found myself crying. And I was like, holy shit, like this, there's something here. And the leader, the song leader said, hey, my teacher's going to be here on the weekend. If you want to come to Lisa G. Littlebird's workshop, then come. And I was supposed to be in a Peter Levine and Bessel van der Kolk experience that weekend, and I'm like, boom, I'm out of there. I'm going to go sing. So I switched over my workshops, and I just found myself crying. And so when there was another, and I'm not a crier, I'm a stuffer, right? And so then 6 months after that, there was a community week of singing, and I totally had a total come apart in ways that were magnificent. Like absolutely magnificent. Yeah, because, do you want to sing with me? You want to see what emerges and be curious?
Hi, yum.
Okay, this song is by
I was told at a very young age I shouldn't even try singing, so I'm just giving that. I still have residue of that.
And I live with a song in my head 24/7. I sing in my head 24/7. We are exactly the opposite that way.
So just
so you know.
That's the notebook.
It's okay. You can just repeat the words or mouth the words or pretend that you're singing. So this is by Shireen Armeni. So I'll sing one line if you like. You can sing or say or whisper the words back. I survived that well.
I survived that well.
And it's over now.
And it's over now.
I can calm down.
I can calm down.
Even smile and feel proud.
Even smile and feel proud.
And we'll repeat. I survived that well.
I survived well.
And it's over now.
And it's over now.
I can calm down.
I can calm down.
Even smile and feel proud.
Even smile and feel proud.
If it's okay, let go of the thinking mind. Just come into the feeling of the vibration moving through your body, because every song is medicine. Every song has a spirit of the song. And this song has been sung by thousands of people who've experienced the medicine of this song. So let's do that again. I survived that well.
I survived that well.
And it's over now.
And it's over now.
I can calm down.
I can calm down.
Even smile and feel proud.
Even smile and feel proud.
We survived that well.
We survived that well.
And it's over now.
And it's over now.
We can calm down.
We can
Calm down.
Even smile and feel proud.
Even smile and feel proud.
You survived that well.
You survived that well.
And it's over now.
And it's over now.
You can calm down.
You can calm down.
Even smile and feel proud.
Even smile and feel proud.
So let's energetically reconnect to the 7 directions. And being in this space together. Every song is a prayer. We survived that well. And it's over now. We can come down, even smile and feel proud. So just notice who the we was that appeared in your space for you.
Oh.
Yeah. So the body keeps the score, but song will reveal the truth in your soul. And the ancient technology that weaves its way through all cultures is song and story and movement and silence. And in this week of community singing, I had moments where the grief that was locked beneath the surface that I was unaware of revealed itself because it was time. All right, so we talk about kairos and chronos. Chronos is clock time, kairos is soul time. And so there's a soul time that is emergent within our space in this moment.
Yeah.
For some of us. I won't speak for others. Yeah.
We've been traveling, Linda, for the past year, visiting different indigenous communities around the world. And the song is at the heart of healing, singing, and community space. And every time we went to ask about trauma, and many communities, when we even said the word trauma, they were like, we don't know what that is. Like, can you explain us? We don't have concept. We don't have a word for it, or because there is no concept of an individual, that there is and going back to actually attachment, some of the most secure attached children I've seen in those communities, like we were in the Amazon and children were running from home from hut to hut, and the first few days I was like, whose child is this? Like, who is the mother here? And who is the pride? Like I come with that lens, like, who is the mother of this one? And the little one is just running and being held by everyone and barefoot, naked, with the land, with the community. And that's where, for me, attachment theory completely, I was really disoriented. And I wonder if, how do you see it? And it's clearly the attachment for the child was coming from community and from the land and from the creatures and the beings living on the land, because he had such an intimate relationship with the snakes, with the birds. They were landing on his shoulders. And so that to me completely opened my Western psychotherapeutic mindset, that I was looking for that like primary connection and caregiver.
Yeah, so what you're also speaking to there, Zaya, is ambiguous grief, right? It's something you never got, and yet deep in your bones, you are yearning for a village, right? And yet, unless we name it, it can't become normalized, and then we can't actually grieve something that we never got, that we know deep in our bones. So a more expansive conceptualization of secure attachment to ancestors. Your ancestors can be your bloodline ancestors. It can also be your activist ancestors, transcestors, as they're called in the queer community. It can be your professional ancestors, your spiritual ancestors, the teachers of your teachers of your teachers of your teachers. These are all ancestors, those who have come before. It can also be your ancestors of rock and stone and lichen and algae, right? Those ancestors with the capital A, the elementals of wind and earth and air and fire and wood and water. And when we look at the evolution of the cosmos, or just let's just start with life on Earth. Let's just start the evolution of life on Earth. For my ancestors to have existed, we needed to co-evolve and coexist alongside our fish siblings, right? Our coconut siblings, our caribou siblings here in Alaska. And when I am hiking in the high mountains of Alaska and I'm on my hands and knees and drinking from a mountain stream just with my mouth, touching the water, I am engaging in an act that connects me to the caribou ancestors of this landscape, because I'm walking along trails that have been etched into the landscape because generations upon generations of animals have walked this landscape. So that's ancestors. So that's secure attachment with ancestors. Then we have secure attachment with nature. Secure attachment with the seasons and the months and the days and the weather. And to be able to name what shifts in the natural world around you at different times of the year. I feel landed into a place when I get into a cab and I say, what happens here at this time of year? What happens in this landscape? And they'll say, the river does this and the sun does this, and these animals go into hibernation and these animals start to wake up and these flowers start to blossom and you can harvest this. And like that is secure attachment to nature. It's the plant world, it's the animal kingdom, it's the shifts in the water table. And it's also throughout the day as well. Like there's insects that emerge at different times of the day, and there's a symphony that happens throughout the day of what's happening. And see, our ancestors help us to tend to nature. They help us to have a relationship with nature where we take care of each other. Then we have secure attachment to culture, which is secure attachment to language, to traditions and customs that mark the passage of the transitions of human development over the course of a lifetime within a village setting. So there may be rituals and ceremony that mark the births, deaths, marriages, coming of age. Yeah, when someone comes, when a visitor leaves, when there's a transition in the village, perhaps the village moves for wet season and then dry season. Yeah, there may be things that we do, like you go to Bali and every full moon and new moon, the village stops and engages in ceremony together. Right? In my family, every full moon and new moon, we eat vegetarian. Right, like that's, yeah, and then we come together and there's special prayers to the ancestors that we do on those days. And with all of these rituals and customs, song, story, movement, and silence are the ancient technologies that weave their way through all cultures. Yeah. The special foods that you eat at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, the people that you go see, the way in which you prepare your body, your clothing, your food, right? It becomes a connection to something larger than yourself. Mm-hmm. I actually believe that that's part of it's part of the antecedents to cultural appropriation, right? Like people feeling bereft of culture and wanting to get a sense of being a part of something bigger, and then we appropriate, aspects of other cultures. Yeah, or we can. Yeah, but I also see that it's how we get a sense of identity. Culture gives us a sense of identity, and with identity, we get a sense of belonging to something bigger than ourselves. Then there's secure attachment to time. And secure attachment, I mean, we have very anxious attachment to time in this modern life. Right, and so we're talking about life spans. Like I'm a pearl on a string of pearls. Yeah. May this work hold resonance for 7 generations. Yeah, it's part of that relationship to time. And then to be able to acknowledge bumblebee time versus redwood time. Yeah. And then lastly, it's secure attachment to our bodies and to the communal body, to touch, to movement, to pleasure, to sleep, to rest, to play, and to work. That my body is not an object, that nature is not an object, that time is not an object, right? So anyway, all of these aspects of this expansive conceptualization of secure attachment that we osmosize through culture gives us a cosmology. And this cosmology was what helped me to repair my relationship with my parents. I have experienced benefit from from attachment theory and learning about attachment theory, and yet it had some shortcomings, which range from unhelpful through to harmful. Yeah. And I also want to acknowledge, and maybe we'll get to it, maybe we won't, that I learned some very specific techniques for repairing that parental secure attachment through studying with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. However, what helped me to get from mess with my parents to being able to do that work with him, was being able to place myself and my parents in a larger web of expansiveness. And I noticed that shift immediately, because I would turn up and be with my parents and we're displaced peoples. And a primary, fundamental, foundational need of humans is for a place. Right? And that place is in our parents' arms, right? Or in our community's arms. But there's also the need for a place. And so when you're displaced, right, I need to place myself and place my parents somewhere within a larger cosmology, so that the rift between us is actually insignificant. And so that was a huge part of my healing journey with my parents. Yeah. And then afterwards came the, the work with Bessel. But let's just pause here. Let's just pause, because I can see, Maurizio, you're deep in thought.
Basically, you bloom. I know my ancestor, my grandmother specifically, gave me song in my head 24/7 to protect me from the pain. I got that during ayahuasca ceremony, in which they told me, "Yeah, you know why you have those songs, because I'm here. We gave it to you to protect you." And this is the first time I felt the use of a song. Use of a song is not the right word. Not for negation of the experience of the pain that I feel and the grief that I cannot manage, that was given to me to protect me. My mom died when I was a young boy. And I felt the song instead as a portal to express it instead of close it. So you gave me an incredible gift that I don't know how to digest yet, but it's moving inside me in all ways, and I'm completely. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You're so welcome, Maurizio.
Oy.
Yeah. We talk about intergenerational trauma, and we rarely talk about intergenerational resilience in a way that can encompass, be bigger than the trauma. As a thread, right? A thread. And that's what I'm hearing as we're interacting. I just hear this magical thread that I've just pulled on that already exists inside of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a song for that as well. Yeah, my grief teacher taught me this. He's an esteemed elder, Lawrence Cole. It's not a call and echo song. I'll just sing it for you. It's William Stafford's poem, The Way It Is. And it's about the thread. I'll see if I can remember it. There is a thread. There is a thread you carry. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt and die. You suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding, but you never let go of the thread.
And the thread is becoming more and more apparent with this last movie. I know my parents, my grandparents are here. I see them when I look to the right, I see my mom, I look to the right, I see my dad with their parents. Yeah. And now it's everything is unfolding. I feel the thread is giving me space. The thread was always stuck. And now I feel in the last year or two, more and more, the thread is like, I see the birds, I hear yeah, thank you. It's so beautiful, this journey of being alive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really appreciated giving us larger context of ancestry and who are our ancestors, because many of us might struggle with the ancestors on a human realm,
Right.
but we all have a secure attachment in us with water, with nature, with other modern human worlds. So what I heard in your journey, you kind of reclaimed or you retasted again what it means, secure attachment through those relationships. And then you found a way to bring that back in your primary care's relationship and connections, which is yeah, it's a journey we can all take for those of us who do struggle with beginning with our primary care takers and immediate family. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, but many of us have been really hurt in those relationships, and it's too painful to begin there.
Beautiful.
I also claim in amongst my bloodline ancestors, those who showed any sort of kindness to any of my bloodline ancestors. Yeah, any teachers of any of my bloodline ancestors. Anyone who made a difference in anyone's life along the way, even though from the outside it may not have looked quite pleasant, but I believe there was some shift that happened somewhere, that accumulates also over time.
Yeah. And the same with culture. Many of us have cultural wounds.
Yes.
So it's not like romanticizing, once I connect to my culture, I will be healed. But it's kind of holding both the wounds that are in the culture that I have, and yet my sense of belonging is there as well. It's built into the culture.
Yes. Well, it's that piece around curiosity, right? The decontextualization of trauma in a people's looks like culture. And so for me to go, oh, what is it about my Vietnamese people that drives me batshit because they have to like do whatever it is that everyone else is doing and take care of other people like all the time, right? Which drives me nuts. And yet at the same time, like the fear of being left behind or standing out or being different is like gripping. But yet I can reframe that as a survival trait, right? Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. In graduate school, I learned that that's the symptomatology of alcoholic families. And at the time, I was furious, but I didn't have the words to explain to someone that when you have experienced communism, fascism, authoritarianism, lived in a body that is being targeted by society, don't trust, don't talk, don't feel are survival strategies. And so that little bit of curiosity can just help to shift things just a little bit about one's own culture so that we can develop discernment about what it is that we choose to inherit, what parts of our inheritance are heirlooms, and what parts of our inheritance we choose to leave behind. Yeah. Mm.
Such a rich conversation, and there's so much, it's bubbling here.
Yeah.
We can go in so many directions, and yet I'm looking at the time. My anxious relationship to time is ticking. So I would love to bring more our guests to the space. So Lisa, maybe we can open the chat. And again, you can type your question, we can read it, and raise your hand. Let us know if you're a person of color. We would love to bring you on first. So let's see. Chat is open, yes. So let's bring Lynn while I'm looking at some of the questions. Lynn Sigo.
She's a bit distracted.
Ah,
She's definitely
maybe
distracted.
not.
Okay.
Lynn. Okay.
Let's move.
So Sarah, maybe we'll bring someone else.
Yes.
Okay. Let me also read a question from someone who did not want to come on. Do you want to read?
Yeah. Can you speak more to what pervasive self-assessment is?
Yes. I'm constantly evaluating myself. Am I too much? Am I not enough? One of the indicators of childhood trauma, and also of being in a racialized body and a body's marginalized by society, is that we're always assessing ourselves. We're always assessing ourselves. Am I too much? Am I not enough? Am I fitting in? We're always putting people above us or putting people below us. And for some of us, it's always above. Yeah. And so we can go back and forth between idealization and grandiosity and self-deprecation. And there's the pervasive inability to have relationships with others as equals. Yeah. And so that's part of pervasive self-assessment. And it can look like anxiety. It can look like OCD. It can look like an inner voice that just won't stop chattering. Yeah.
Thank you. Jaila Damaris.
Jaila? There we go.
Hey, thank you so much for all of your work that you do. And Linda, this has been wonderful. My question is, can I receive secure attachment in my other relationships? I don't want to have relationships with either of my parents. I survived occult domestic violence. Like, can you maybe speak to that?
Sure, Jayla. Can I ask you to put your hand back up just so I can, you disappeared from my screen when you put your hand down. Ah, there you are. Yes. In chapter 18 of The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk talks about his studies with Al Peso and Diane Boyden in a technique known as psychodrama structures, where he studied with them for like 7 or 9 years, like a significant period of time. And when I saw this work in action, I was just so enamored. And I'll ask the SANS team to send you a video clip of what this work looks like so that you can just see it. But in essence, we're putting our real parents out into 3-dimensional space. And there is something about working in a group context where we ask other group members to take on the roles of our real parents, put them in 3-dimensional space so that we can complete whatever it is that is there between us. We can air our grievances, right? And then we can ask group members to take on roles of ideal parents who would have been there for us in the ways in which we needed back then. And part of the corrective emotional experience or the restorative experience can actually be pushing them away, right? It could actually be, fighting back because you weren't able to fight back then. Part of the restorative experience could actually be giving your parents ideal parents, because that would have then prevented your parents from getting into a cult. Yeah. And then there's a space that opens up. Yeah. There's a space that opens up that allows us to then take in ideal parents or an ideal elder, ideal support people, an ideal culture. That then shifts the internal compass towards this capacity to take up space in the world as you are.
Was that in chapter 18? You said I've got my book here.
Yes, chapter 18.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome, Jayla.
Jayla.
Tawani?
Tawani Clark. That's from you.
Hi, Linda. So good to see you again and just hear a lot of things that I've heard you say before, but it just lands so much deeper with me today. Yeah. I grew up in Zambia. That's where I was born and stayed until up to 4 years ago when I moved to Denver, Colorado. And what I'm very keenly aware of is how much of my culture as a Zambian, well, Zambia is a very recent concept that is, you can't, Zambian is tenuous. My grandmother is Ngoni, was Ngoni. My grandfather was Tumbuka. And these are tribes that span, the borders. Some are in Zambia and some are in Malawi. But what I have seen is that our culture is diluted and has been stigmatized in the last century, where we don't practice, we don't think. We're scared to use our local medicine because it is witchcraft. We don't practice our natural religions because they're seen as demonized. So I feel a great sense of loss.
I'm right here with you. And we are right here with you. Because it's more than cultural loss, it's identity assault.
So where do I go from here?
This grief, this grief are the tears that your ancestors could not cry. These tears are the grief over the price of freedom and the awareness that is now available, where you can read about European colonization of Africa, where you can read books like Postcards from the Congo that gives the history, where you can listen to Trevor Noah's audiobook, which I learned so much about the history of Africa and South Africa. Yeah. Where we can access the stories of other cultures who've also experienced similar things to your culture, so that we can reclaim that ancestral wisdom.
It's just basic discipline stuff. And then you have to get that back in now.
And maybe,
Thank you.
and maybe this is the thread. Maybe this is your thread.
That Elijah has been used Elijah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Tawani.
Thank you, Tawani.
Maybe we can read this question
Yes.
from Larissa.
Have you found a connection to the native people of Alaska because of their analogous experience of collective grief due to not only displacement, but to their marginalization by foreign colonizers. As an American-born daughter of Ukrainian immigrant displaced by World War II, I found a deeper connection to African American because of the way they navigated the suffering they had collectively endured.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
Oh, sorry, Larissa, you were here. I'm sorry, we didn't see your hand.
Let's bring
Let's
Larissa.
unmute Larissa. Apologize. We read your question. You had your hand up. We didn't see. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't voice myself, but yeah, I thought we were supposed to write the questions.
You did. You did. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. You did exactly. Sorry.
And it's wonderful because I like seeing people if I can. Yes. Yes, right. Diaspora communities have so much resilience and creativity and resource in terms of how we survive and how we forge ahead and how we maintain an intact sense of self in the ways in which we can. And there's so much that we can learn with and through each other. But the challenge is to get us in the same spaces, right? In such a way where there isn't structural poverty, there isn't structural lack of resources that causes for us to lateralize violence and be fighting against each other for the breadcrumbs at the table. Yeah. Yeah. In Alaska, there is a way of introducing yourself where you say, my father is Tai Van Nam, my mother is Yung Tu Ha, my father's parents are Tai Hul and Nguyen Thi King. And my mother's, right, we go through that and then we actually name the villages that our parents are from or that they live in. And in Alaska, that is how you introduce yourself so that people can place you. Yeah, back to that place thing. So Alaska Natives will do that whole introduction in their native language first and then in English, so that the other Alaska Natives in the space can place you, can place your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents into an interrelational network. And Alaska's a small state, and at the start I thought it was kind of invasive and intrusive that people would say, oh, who are you married to? Where does he work? Where do you work? And I'm like, whoa, questions. And then I realized they're trying to place me in amongst the community and in amongst the people that they know who might know me, because that's how things operate here. And the first time I was invited into an Alaska Native only space where I was the only non-native person there. I'm introducing myself in Vietnamese and then in English, and I'm feeling myself about to start crying, and I don't know why. And then I share the story of my peoples. And then there's that silence, and then an elder stands up and he says, I knew about the Vietnam War, but I didn't realize that your people were colonized too. And in that moment, everything that I could constrict and not show it constricted. And then I went home that as soon as I got in the car, I burst into tears because it's the colonization of Vietnam under the French was very different to the Alaska Native peoples. And yet I knew intellectually that we were colonized, but I didn't know it in my bones. And the more that I started to speak my own language, the more that I could feel a vibration coming back to me that was offering a wisdom that I couldn't name with words. Yeah. And so, yes is the short answer to that. I haven't been to too many collective grief experiences in the Alaska Native community to be able to speak to that part of your question. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Larissa. And yet there's a different energetics in the space when we're with Native peoples, right? When we're with peoples who come from collectivistic cultures. like there's a different vibe. I can't explain it any other way. There's a feeling thing where my nervous system can just settle because I know I'm being held in a collective nervous system that has been so healing for me because of my own struggles with feeling Vietnamese in the Vietnamese community. And I needed to have that experience somewhere else before I could experience it again with my Vietnamese people. Yeah.
Priscilla.
Priscilla.
Hola.
Hola. Linda, thank you so much. I was so excited. A friend forwarded me the email about this event, and I'm so glad I could be here. My question is kind of from stuff you were saying at the very beginning that, when your parents are saying, you should be grateful, you should be so grateful because my upbringing was this and yours is this. So be grateful. And with what I know now, and I think about that, I feel a lot of rage. It feels like I've created my own inner parent and she's pissed that you would talk to my child that way. And then it causes me to want to separate completely from my parents, from my nuclear family. My mom can send me a text that says hello, and I want to smash my phone. And so I'm just wondering, what do I do with that rage? And I also don't want to feel that way towards a person, regardless of who they are. I don't want to live in rage, and I don't want to feel this way against anyone.
Yes. Oh, there's so many layers to your question, Priscilla. So let's start with at the individual level. Rage can be one of the processes of grief. Yeah. And so I love community-based grief events where there is a sacred rage pit as well as a grief altar. Yeah. So that's one possibility there. So that you actually have a healthy outlet for it and you're held in ways that can hold the bigness of that energy. The next part of rage, Ken Hardy talks about rage as anger that has aged. So there can be systemic oppression historically, intergenerationally over time that gets passed on. Yeah, and so, right? And so to be able to move towards rage in healthy ways allows us that discernment. And then the other aspect of rage is that when one has one's own individual trauma history, there is annihilation energy. So this is Resmaa Menakem's work. So we talk about fight, flight, freeze, flop, as well as the attach cry. Well, that fight, for some of us, it's not a fight response. It's an annihilate response. Yeah. And so to normalize that within the frame of curiosity, if you relate to that annihilation energy, to become curious about perhaps doing trauma work around this, but just getting curious around the possibility that there may have been in your lifetime, or perhaps like ancestral trauma that has been inherited, annihilation energy that has been received. Yeah, because we can internalize that as self-annihilation, or we can project that out as you just triggered that thing in me that makes me feel like I need to annihilate you. And I see a big smile on your face.
That's it. That's what's happening.
Yeah, it's cool. There's nothing wrong with you. Yeah. So
I'm glad you brought up the ancestral, because I'm also, through my healing journey, learning that I inherited a lot of my mother's fear, because the way that she grew up was physically unsafe. There was a lot of violence, and that's not how I grew up. So I, should be grateful. I know her traumas are not healed. And so I'm thinking I've inherited all of her fears. And perhaps there's that annihilation energy too. of, you know, women. I'm Mexican, you know, you don't speak back to your husband no matter what. My grandmother was beaten, you know, and never stepped away. So that lands as well.
Yes. 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 There was another piece in there. Oh, have you ever been around like infants and toddlers, Priscilla? Like they're sponges. They're sponges for our energy.
Mhm.
And we take on the unresolved stuff of our parents. Yeah, like it's not woo-woo. Like we feel it, we take it on. And I actually believe that we then reenact that in our lives, but part of that reenactment is a way of trying to resolve it, like trying to master it, trying to resolve it, trying to move it through. And there are ways in which to do that. So I just want to hold open that hope and that possibility.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
I've liked the term science woo-woo. That feels, you know, it feels good. So thank you so much.
Shankar?
Shankar V.
Of course, I just took a bite of an apple. So my question is, how can this work help us with violation that's happening now as a lived experience? And the example that I chose was, you know, South Asian voices being erased in yoga and the feelings of being unseen, which obviously work alongside attachment theory. And can it offer something in relation to like being compassionate towards the people that are doing the erasing? They feel like they're loving people and they're being loving, and yet they're doing the erasing. So yeah, how can it help us with situations like that in which the violation's happening now, really?
Yes. I'm going to go sideways and come back. So trauma historically has been framed as what's wrong with you. And then with trauma-informed pedagogy, it then became what happened to you. Yeah. And then culturally informed, it becomes what happened to your peoples. And then liberation psychology asks what continues to happen to you and to your people. And so for us to continue to have a voice in the world, for us to continue to be in the world, we need nourishment, we need sustenance, we need resource. And so we need to fuel ourselves in ways that have longevity. And so part of that answer is actually culture building, because white-bodied, you know, Eurocentric cultures default to how to be anti-racist, how to be a good person, right? Like it's a how to. And the 7 generations ahead of us answer is we need to build culture. We need to find ways to nourish ourselves, to uplift ourselves and each other so that we can continue to do this work in a world that has people who are on our side and on our page, folks who are getting there, and some folks who may not ever get there, and that's okay. Yeah. And my own compassion towards myself in my areas of non-awareness is what allows me to offer compassion to others. Because I've been called in, enough times where I saw myself decompensating into the white woman tears, an analogy or metaphor, to see myself going into but I want you to like me, but I want to be a good girl. I am a good girl, aren't I? And to have lived through those experiences allows me to hold a lot more grace towards individual others who don't know what they don't know until they know it, because that has also been me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's also been me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling feeling what I'm sure a lot of people feel a lot of the time, that 7 generations ahead is a long way away, even though that's the way that I view. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm going through an acute situation at the moment, and I don't want to take up people's time with that. But yeah, I hear you, and the how-to part is really on point and really incisive. Is there anything in this for comfort now?
I draw upon the work oftentimes of Black activist, like slave activist ancestors, as well as transcestors, because I hear the stories of their struggles and what they sought to achieve in their one lifetimes that is holding resonance now. 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 generations later, and that gives me sustenance. I read up on the history of the Black Panthers. I recently read Gandhi's history, right? And to go, wow, that was the life and times that Gandhi lived through, and this is how he chose to move through that lifetime. That gives me sustenance. It gives me a bigger picture through time. Yeah.
Thank you, that's powerful.
Yeah. And so I invite into this moment, Shankar, if it feels okay with you, right, the struggles of colonial South Asia for independence. And if that does land for you as sustenance, just notice what shifts for you in or around your body. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a gathering of heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Your ancestors may have worn suits and towed the line and played the game, but they knew what the long ball prize was. It was liberation. Yeah. Mm.
Maybe we have time for one more question, and let's bring Ellen.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me all right? Thank you. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'm not used to speaking in front of this many people. So Linda, the question that I had was around the yearning for a village that you were speaking of. So my heritage is my mother is Indian, my father is white, and I live in Bristol in the UK. And something that I'm finding difficult at the moment is, as a queer person, I find the area that I live, there is a sense of belonging that I have here, but there is almost an enormous amount of cultural appropriation and parts of myself that I feel I have to sacrifice in order to fit into some sense of community. And I think when I hear you speak about where you live and the remoteness of it, there is something so like attractive to me about that lifestyle. And I think the question that I have is around, I guess for you and your own journey, at what point did you recognize that living that type of lifestyle was the decision that you wanted to make? Because I think I'm really yearning for a village, but I'm also noticing that the more that I yearn for it, the more pain I'm in. Does that make sense as a question? Sorry, it's a bit convoluted.
It comes back to that thread, right? To follow that thread. And if there's that thread there, follow it. Years after I moved to Alaska, I did my ancestry DNA test, and I find out that one of my grandmothers is Dai, which is a mountainous tribe of people who love the mountain regions of the Annamite chain of mountains, which is the extension of the Himalayas, which is a border between like Vietnam and then Laos and Cambodia and Thailand. And I'm just like, oh my God, that's why I love these mountainous regions and these scarce landscapes. Like there's a barrenness external to me that mirrors a barrenness inside of me that is a homecoming. And yet it didn't make sense till years afterwards. Years and years afterwards. Yeah. And I mean, my parents say to me, even our relatives in Vietnam have running water. And I just say to them, I don't care. I'm so much happier when I'm growing my own food. I'm fishing, I'm hunting, I've got this direct relationship with the land. And you can't argue with a happy person. Yeah.
Thank you. Follow the thread. Good. Thank you.
Mm.
Oh, the trend.
Oh, wow.
Let's read one more question.
Yes. So,
from Malia
Matheson,
Yes.
how does your much more expensive understanding of attachment come into how you work with clients who may be struggling with close adult relationship? For example, where Western psychology might see attachment issue in a partnership as only about what's between two people and their individual history and primary caregivers.
Yes. Yeah, in my clinical work, I serve a lot of folks with complex developmental trauma histories. And I've also experienced it myself where people will judge me about my lack of human relationships. And yet what I find is that we're so incredibly resourceful. Like ask about people's relationship to nature or to the seasons or to their food or to the way in which they collect their food. Yeah, their relationship to clothing. I wear a lot of natural fibers. Yeah. It's been my experience that it's somewhere between 5 and 10 years of, for many of my clients, of actually having no human relationships, as well as developing relationships with pets, with plants, with nature, with rocks, with crystals, with hobbies, right? That then sort of rebuild things so that we can entertain the idea of the possibility of being in groups with other people, like being in a yoga class where you're in the back of the room. Like that can be more than way too much. Yeah. And so we just scaffold this in such a way that reminds people of their wholeness and of their desire for connection with non-human life forms. Yeah. And build upon that.
Yeah. And we need for belonging. I just wonder if you have any recommendations for those who are seeking for therapeutic support. Is there any modality that you feel gets closer to this more expansive view of attachment and belonging?
I believe that this more expansive view of attachment and belonging can be conceptualized into existing frameworks for resourcing, for EMDR, for brain spotting, for IFS. It can be brought in as resource, into therapeutic modalities that already exist. And it's about finding ways in which it works for you. So sometimes we actually have to have a voice with our therapist. I have an Alaska Native client, when we did brain spotting with a wand, they were like, no, that's the spot, but I don't want to look at a wand. And so I moved one of my plants and I said, okay, it's right here, isn't it? Right. So they'll look at the arch where two leaves connect and they're like, that's my brain spot. Right. And that worked better for them to look at a brain spot on a plant than what it is looking at a pointer. Yeah. And so let this work move through you in such a way that expansion occurs naturally for you as a practitioner so that you can weave this in. And same for you in terms of your own healing journey. Follow that thread. Follow that thread. I've come to accept that healing is a lifelong experience and that there is no one magic trick that will cure me of all of my ailments. I wish there was, but there's not. Yeah, and some of it is also life, right? If like let yourself linger upon the tree that's outside your window and notice that every single tree has a different dance in the wind. And some trees dance like this, some trees dance like this. And I am getting to know, I'm befriending the tree that's outside my window. Yeah. And so it's also how we live. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, the relationality in which we embedded in, they don't have to look far to get in touch with it. What a beautiful invitation for moment to moment practice and emergence, and to notice and celebrate that relationality. Yeah. Linda, it has been such a delight to be in conversation and space and in song with you and in tears with you. And I apologize for those questions and human beings we couldn't get to, but I hope in the future we might have a chance to continue our conversation. And Linda, if you can let people know how they can connect with you, or if there is any other offering you have that they can follow you.
Sure, thank you. I have a website. It's www.linda-tai.com. I teach classes into the world, so you'll see a lot of my offerings in the upcoming events section, as well as on-demand and live classes. I have a monthly newsletter. I only send a newsletter once a month. I might send something during the month, maybe 1 out of 3 or 4 months. You can see my past newsletter archive on the website as well, so that you don't have to subscribe. You can just check that out. And then I also have Facebook if you prefer to keep in touch via Facebook. Yeah.
And we will be sharing with all the participants all the resources Linda shared and references to music, to videos, to books. So you will get that from us through email, as well as the recording of this meeting. So it will be all available. Anything else, Linda, you feel inspired to share or to complete our space and time together?
I just wanted to offer a cảm ơn bạn. Cảm ơn bạn nhiều lắm. Chia tay chung nhau hôm nay. Thank you.
Thank you.